ナムミョホレンゲキョ。ナムミョホレンゲキョ。ナムミョホレンゲキョ。Okay, thank you very much for joining me chanting. Hopefully you feel like your spiritual batteries are recharged. So today I'd like to share a story with everybody from one of Nichiren Shonin's writings. So the founder of our school, whose name is Nichiren Shonin, was a monk in 13th century Japan, and we are very fortunate that we have a large collection of his letters and treatises still in existence in his original hand today, and many which have been copied by his immediate disciples and followers and kept through the generations. And he was an extremely learned monk. So if you read his writings, just by reading his writings, you can get to know many of the Buddha's teachings or sutras, and also lots of stories from Chinese classics, Confucianism, many things like that. So just by reading his writings, we can be exposed to the Buddha's teachings in great depth. And the amazing thing is, whenever he was writing a letter to anybody, he would always give some teaching, even if it was just a simple thank you note. He would always include some message of the Buddha from the sutras. And so it's a wealth of different stories. And today, I'd like to read the story which is behind the extract which we read today, Matsu no Donogo Henji. So before chanting Odaimoku, we read on page 82, there are thousands of fish eggs, but few become fish. Hundreds of mango bloom, but few become fruit. It is the same with human beings. Because most people are turned aside by evil distractions, there is an army of warriors wearing armor for truth, but few attain Buddhahood. So I guess many people are familiar with this Gosho. So do you know the origin of these words? Actually, Nichiren Shonin is quoting or paraphrasing from one of the Buddha's sutras, the Nirvana Sutra. These words appear in the chapter called Noble Practice or Noble Action in that sutra. And they are spoken by a god called Shakra Devanam Indra. And so I'd like to share with you the story in which those words appear. It's a story about a young boy who is called Sesen Doji, or Snow Mountain Boy. Okay, so please listen to the story. A long time ago, there was a young man who lived in the snowy mountains of the Himalayas and was called the Snow Mountain Boy. Secluded deep in the mountains, he lived a simple life, practicing the way and gathering ferns and nuts to keep himself alive. Having carefully observed the world of birth and death, the boy had come to understand that nothing is permanent and everything changes, and that all that is born is destined to die. He understood that this weary world is as fleeting as a flash of lightning, as the morning dew that vanishes in the sun, as a lamp easily blown out by the wind, or as the fragile leaves of the plantain that are so easily broken. Thinking in this way, for the sake of all beings, the Snow Mountain Boy resolved to awake from the dream of the transient world and to seek the reality, of enlightenment. For that reason, he secluded himself in the mountains and devoted himself to deep meditation, sweeping away the dust of delusion and befuddlement in his single-minded pursuit of the Buddha's teaching. The god Shakra, looking down from heaven, observed the snow mountain boy and thought to himself, "A fish, for example, may have many eggs, but only a few fish will manage to emerge from them. The mango tree has many flowers, but the fruits are small in number. The people who aspire to enlightenment are many, but so few are those who attain that end that it is not worth mentioning. There are many people decked out in armor and with arms, who proceed to beat the enemy, but if the mind has fear while on the battlefield, that person is forced to draw back. It is like this with all beings. A person may be strongly armed with bodhicitta and be adorned with it, but on seeing the works of birth and death, the mind feels fear, at which the person has to pull back. Let me go to test this young man's resolve." Then Shakra transformed himself into a Rakshasa, which is a flesh-eating demon, who was terrifying to behold. He went down from heaven to the Himalayas and stood not far away from the boy. At that time, the Buddha had not yet made his appearance in the world, and although the Snow Mountain boy had sought everywhere for the scriptures of the great vehicle, he had been unable to learn anything of them. So, speaking in a clear voice, the Rakshasa demon spoke half a verse from the teachings of the past Buddhas. Shogyo mujo, zesho meppo. All things change. This is the law of birth and death. The young man immediately got up from his seat, lifted his hair back with his hand, and looked around in amazement, and said, "Who spoke that verse I just heard? Who is it that opens the gate of emancipation, and so thunders out the voice of all Buddhas? Who is it who, amidst the sleep of birth and death, alone awakes and utters such words?" He was overjoyed at hearing the words and looked all around, but there was no one in sight except the demon standing nearby. In appearance, fierce and horrible. The hairs on its head were like flames, and the teeth in its mouth like swords, and its eyes fixed upon the boy with a furious glare. But when the boy saw this, he was not frightened in the least. He was so overjoyed at the opportunity to hear something of the Buddhist teaching that he wondered, could it have been the demon, the Rakshasa demon, who recited the verse? On second thought, it seemed impossible, since the demon must have been reborn as a demon in retribution for some past evil karma. Surely anyone who had heard this verse would do away with all ill and ugliness. How could a being like this deliver such a verse? But, thinking that the Rakshasa demon may have met the Buddhas of the past, he asked, "Where did you get this half of a chintamani, a wish-fulfilling jewel of a verse?" "O Brahmin, do not ask me the meaning of this," replied the demon. "I've had nothing to eat for days. I've looked all around but cannot find anything to eat. Due to thirst, hunger, and worry, my mind is deranged, and my words do not come out in order. My mind itself does not know what is what." The boy said, "If you tell me about this verse, I shall be your disciple to the end of my life. What you spoke was not entire, and the meaning was not complete. Now that I've heard it, my mind is surprised and overjoyed, but I also have doubt. Please tell me the rest and ease my mind." The demon replied sarcastically, "You have penetrated deeply into wisdom, only you care solely for your own self and miss what was meant. I'm pressed by hunger. I cannot carry on talking." The boy inquired, "What kind of food do you eat?" The Rakshasa demon replied, "Don't ask me that. When I tell people the answer, they get frightened." But the Snow Mountain boy was insistent. He said, "I live alone. There's no one else here, and I'm not afraid. Why don't you tell me?" The Rakshasa demon answered, "What I eat is the soft flesh of man. What I drink is man's warm blood. It is an unfortunate destiny of mine that I have to sustain my life in this way. I go around and look about, but I cannot get any of these things. There are men in the world, but all have virtue. All are protected by heaven. Besides, I have no strength and cannot kill." Hearing this, the boy decided to give his own body for the sake of the Dharma, for the sake of the Buddha's teaching, so that he could hear the entire verse. "Your food is right here," he said. "You need look no further. Tell me the meaning of the verse in full, and after hearing it, I shall offer you my body. I may die, but such a body of mine is of no use to me. It's possible I could be attacked and devoured by a tiger or a wolf, owl or eagle at any moment, without my being blessed with a hair's amount of gain. Since I am now intent on enlightenment, I shall discard a body for it." Then the demon grew furious and demanded, "Who could believe what you say? Who would give up their beloved body for the sake of 8 words? The boy replied, "This body of mine is not hard enough, so I mean to trade it in for an indestructible one. It will be like giving up on an earthenware pot for a vessel that contains 7 jewels. You say, 'How can I believe you?' But I have witnesses, such as Brahma, Shakra, and the 4 guardians of the earth, who will all bear witness that I will indeed cast aside my body for the sake of those 8 words." The demon, considering, said, "If you wish to throw away your body, then listen well, listen well. I shall now recite the remaining half of the verse for you." The Snow Mountain boy, overjoyed, took off the deer-skin clothing he had on and spread it on the ground for the Rakshasa demon to preach upon. "Please, sit on this. I shall fold my hands in prayer and prostrate myself before you." Thus he offered his heartfelt respect to the demon. The demon, seating himself on the deer-skin, then recited these words: "Shō metsu metsu I, jaku metsu I raku." When birth and death are done away with, quietude is bliss. Having heard the verse, the boy rejoiced and pondered greatly upon the meaning of the words. Resolving to remember the verse in his next life, he repeated it over and over again and etched it deep into his mind. In order to benefit others, he inscribed the verse on stones, walls, and trees along the path, and he prayed that those who might later pass by would see it, understand its meaning, and finally enter the true path. Having done that, he climbed a tall tree. So, if I can get technology to work, hopefully you can see the picture. He climbed a tall tree and threw himself off it in front of the Rakshasa, saying, This verse is what the Buddhas of the past, present, and future have had for the opening up of teaching. I give up my body for this, to bring it into the world. I do not give up my body for profit, fame, or treasure, nor for the bliss of the Chakravartin, or man, or heaven. I cast this away for the benefit of all beings. Before he had reached the ground, several voices rang out from the heavens, and the god Shakra quickly transformed his body back from the form of the demon and took hold of the boy in mid-air and gently placed him on the ground. Then Shakra and all the devas in heaven and the god Brahma fell to the ground, touched the boy's feet, and raised him up in reverence. They said, "Excellent, excellent. You are truly a bodhisattva who benefits innumerable beings. Please listen to us confess our misdeeds." By casting away his body to listen to half a verse, the bodhisattva was able to eradicate offences calling for 12 kalpas of the sufferings of birth and death, and was able to attain enlightenment. So this story, which appears in the Nirvana Sutra, is one of what are called Jataka, a story about one of the previous lives of the Buddha. So Shakyamuni Buddha, the founder of Buddhism, this was a story about his past life. So there are many messages included. So for example, that young person had a question. He wanted to seek the answer. So he wanted to know what is important, what is unimportant. In this world, there seem to be many different things which are vying for our attention and which all scream out, "I'm important, I'm important." But sometimes they're not so important. Our human life is, as far as we know, only one. Of course, as Buddhists, we believe in rebirth, but at the moment, we only have this life. If you take really good care of your body, and you're very fortunate as well, you can live very long life. But you can only live around 100 years, or maybe 110, but not 150. So it's a finite thing, very precious. So this story asks us to think, how are you going to spend your life? What's important? How can you make your life meaningful? And then, next, we not only have a human life, but we also met Buddhism, the Buddha's teachings, Dharma. The Snow Mountain Boy lived in the Himalayas in a time when there was no Buddhism. So even 8 kanji Chinese characters, he was willing to give up his life in order to receive them. So, of course, we cannot do that, but we should try to search for the truth as much as we can. Don't be attached. Don't be lazy. Don't be reluctant in seeking the truth. And also, this story mentions everything is changing, everything is temporary. So therefore, whenever you feel down, the world pressing in on us, chant Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Happiness will come in the future. And also, whenever you're happy, enjoy. But remember, happiness is like a dream within a dream. Don't get carried away. And finally, a very interesting thing. Before he offered his life to the demon, Snow Mountain Boy thought about the teaching over and over to etch it into his mind. But that wasn't enough. He then physically etched the teaching into the rocks, walls, along the path, hoping that other people would be able to meet the teaching, embark on the path, and find true inner peace. So, because of his action, even the gods bowed to him, touched his feet, and then praised him as a great bodhisattva. So, in our quest to find meaning, to find happiness, sometimes it can feel like a very long road. But we shouldn't give up. We should keep striving forwards and then make that the priority. And then from having that goal, then our life will have meaning. You know, lots of people search for happiness, but in the sense of pleasure. And then through that happiness, they try to find lasting happiness through temporary happiness. But I feel the best way to have a happy life is to have a meaningful life. So I believe that is also one of the messages of this story. Meaning is created. We have to create the meaning in our life. And then when we have a meaning, then that path, journey which we're traveling on is happiness. So if you have a chance, please read this story in Nichiren Shoni's writings. The writing is called Matsuno Dono Gohenji. And also you can read it in the Nirvana Sutra directly. The chapter called Pure Action. Okay, so thank you very much for listening, and I hope everybody has a nice afternoon. At 4 o'clock we will have afternoon tea, so hope to see you then. Okay, please let's chant Odaimoku 3 times. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge